The Rise of Africa, the continent, the diaspora, and BRICS explores the relationships that are affecting the global economy right now. This book explores the relationships of the African diaspora's influence on the African continent and why this is important in stabilizing relationships with an understanding of how BRICS impacts the future, good or bad. You can order your copy of The Rise of Africa today on Amazon.com. Neo-diplomacy is the new currency. Neo-diplomacy is the new currency. The reason that I can say that is you have a couple of different factors occurring right now as we speak on the world stage. The dollar is being disrupted. Nations are no longer wanting to engage with the United States. But the third factor that affects each and every one of us is that there is a diaspora from the African continent that's willing and able to engage our brothers and sisters on the continent.
Every journey begins with a simple act of care. For Quest to Unite Africa, that journey started with something simple: a mother, a newborn, and a promise that no life would be forgotten. We did not begin with buildings, we began with people. We packed mother newborn kits with our own hands because real change starts where the need is greatest. Those kids traveled farther than we imagined, and they opened our eyes to a deeper truth. Aid saves lives, but infrastructure saves generations. So we grew. Together with donors, volunteers, and partners, we sent a medical container to Burkina Faso. Not just supplies, but hope. Not just boxes, but proof that when a community comes together, healing moves across borders. That moment changed us because we realized something powerful. We weren't just delivering help, we were building a future. Now the journey continues. The next chapter is bigger than a shipment, bigger than a campaign. We are raising funds to build a state-of-the-art hospital, a place where mothers can give birth safely, where families can find care close to home, and where communities can grow stronger for generations to come. This hospital is not just a structure, it's a promise. A promise that healthcare will no longer be temporary. A promise that dignity will have a permanent home. And just like every step before, we cannot do this alone. Every gift, every brick, every name placed on the founder path becomes part of a story that began with compassion and is growing into legacy. It helps us move from emergency aid to lasting healing, from containers to care that never leaves, from vision to reality. Join us, stand with us, help us build a hospital that will serve generations, moving healthcare into action. Visit q2ua.org today.
All right, shalom, salama, siyemi, shalawam. Greetings to all my Israelite brothers and sisters from around the world, whether you're the bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the house of Israel, or you're a Gentile grafted into the house under the blood of Yahushua HaMashiach. I welcome you this morning. Boy. You know, yesterday was actually very what's the best way to say it? There was a lot that was going on yesterday. A lot of earthquakes. That had happened. Let me show you this one. I think to me this is kind of the most notable because I did say something about this the other day, actually yesterday, to my son, because he has some friends on out in Japan that he had made in his visits, his travels, and one of the things that when you are over there, either visiting or living, you're able to kind of, get an understanding of how, um, of the culture and things of that nature. But what you also understand and experience is that Japan is very active in terms of the earthquakes, and they were saying that there was not a tsunami warning, but clearly you can see right here the waters had receded. And rushes back on in. So I'm not laughing. It is, at that destruction. It is very. You could tell they have the alarms. That is not AI. I can see that is a genuine um, piece of media. But you saw that people took heed. They got the high ground, and they were waiting for the inevitable disaster to struck. And again, all this was yesterday. I want to continue to show this. They're huddled up. They're trying to brace themselves. They know that was a very powerful earthquake. Yeah, look at the roads, the homes, all damaged. Homes falling over, tipping over. And they build those structures to be able to withstand those particular quakes. But I say all that because just like what you saw or we were looking at in the tsunami, how you're seeing the danger coming through. A lot of people will either choose it's a natural response. You can either choose to be reactive or to move in the moment, or you could choose to sit there. And generally speaking, that's when people sit there and then they all is lost mentality. They don't get, they're not thinking, their rationale, their ability to understand becomes distorted, and they're in dangerous predicaments because they can only make sense of so much that is going on unless somebody tells them, hey, let's go, let's move, unless they feel some sort of a an exterior sensory, a touch, a feel, then they can't react because their minds become numb. And you have to understand that that is human nature. But to combat the human nature, the fight or flight, the shell shock isms, the stun, the paralysis of fear, fear causes paralysis. We used to have a saying that you would have analysis paralysis when your mind is trying to understand everything all at once and it gets overloaded. So I wanted to come here and start off, excuse me, folks, a little harsh this morning, and start off with those videos because I want us to realize that there are times in our life where we're going through, excuse me, not doing too well this morning. Hallelujah. We go through struggles, and we have to come to an understanding of how to work through those struggles. It doesn't mean that we are down for the count. It just means that we have to be able to understand how we personally work and deal with things. See, these folks are bracing themselves against the buildings, huddling together. And you have to understand that those are techniques. You huddle. That's a natural survival instinct, huddling. Now, in this earthquake, I believe there are people actually trapped in a mall within that earthquake, according to some news reports. And folks were getting out of their buildings. They were running. They were being required to, as Jacoba would say, they were being required to flee. So I do want to without putting all brother Asaph's business on out there in Front Street, but brother Asaph, um, uh, I just spoke with him via WhatsApp. He texted me earlier this morning. Um, he everything is fine according to the doctors. With his situation, it was an episode, a little bit of a complication that had folks concerned, but it wasn't of any grave nature. So that's a blessing. The Most High had come through with our brother. So he is sigh of relief, to say the least. I'll see how he's doing. If he'll be up to come on out or to come on up when I put on out the link here in a little bit. But I got to work towards this link. Just as Brother Asaph is working towards healing in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach. And you know, a lot of these things we have to be cautious. Everybody, you have to be cautious with your health. We had something last week with some of our Q2A members, and we prayed about the ailments, the infirmities right there on the spot. So it's a blessing that the prayers of the righteous availeth much. And and here's the thing. I've been seeing a lot of the, the other folks getting mad that we're waking up, getting mad that we know who we are. But if you understand, this has been a bit different than it was, let's just say, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Because why? Because there is a level of maturity, spiritual maturity, that we had to endure. All of us, myself included. And in doing so, that spiritual maturity, well, when you get mad and you get angry, guess what you're going to do? You're going to take it out on people. You're going to deflect. No, it's not my fault. No, it's not this. No, it's not that. No, surely it couldn't have been my ancestors' fault. No, surely it could not have been the fact that we broke a covenant. Do you see? Oh, you're just here because we conquered you, and you're here because we conquered you. And you have to understand that on the other dynamic, it's wait a second, because we had participated in wickedness and we were able to enjoy the benefit of the wickedness, but that's a cost. They were understanding the opposite analysis of this, the negative analysis. Wait a second, you're telling us that now that you're awakened, the what we received in this life was simply because you all were being judged, and in your judgment we received the benefit, and then receiving the benefit our hearts were made callous. So then the judgment, when it gets here, there's no turning around, there's no stopping it, there's no turning back. But the only thing that they could focus on was our hurt and our brokenness, because we are a hurt and broken people. We are, because we didn't know how to process that hurt and that brokenness, especially in our awakening. Oh, well, I can't trust anything. I can't trust the word. I can't trust the church, the Bible, and then you have to understand And by and large, we have understood that a lot of our people were already grounded in Yahuwah through Yahusha. We were already understanding the truth because the Ruach HaKodesh leads you and guides you into all truths. So we had a bit more of an actual roadmap than those that were just operating in the flesh. You can get understanding and fleshly knowledge. Doesn't mean that that's the appropriate way to understand. It's just like this. You can get trained to do all sorts of medical procedures on YouTube. Okay, how do I do this? How do I do that? What do I do? How do I do this procedure? Yeah, they'll show you. They'll give you little animations and everything else without being gory, obviously, but they'll show you different procedures. It doesn't mean that you can actually show up at a hospital and say, I can do the same procedure. Nope. Doesn't work that way. Because there has to be a certification to this. You have to be certified under who? Or anointed. It's an anointing under who? Under the Ruach HaKodesh through Yahushua HaMashiach. Because if not, then you'll be going through hardships, going through pains, and then you'll go into your flesh. That's just how it goes. That flesh is a powerful thing. You'll start saying crazy stuff. You'll start doing crazy stuff. You'll start reacting and crazy because why? Because that is the trap and the agenda that the enemy has for the Most High's people. Did anything get better? Waking up to knowing who you were or who you are, your ancestry, actually knowing that you're the people, actually knowing that there are tribes on out there, that there are people on out there. And YouTube does listen because it's crazy how I'll get all these suggestions. Well, look at this video, look at that video, look at this, oh, look at this tribe. Okay. Unless the Ruach is literally inspiring all of his people all at once. I'm just saying. I guess that's the benefit of a surveillance state. And then there's obviously negatives to the surveillance state. You know, I was just talking about it. I know. I'm listening to all of your conversations, and they're being reported to a government database for some secret funding things that nobody will know of until years later when this whole time frame has been unraveled. Well, you didn't tell the American people that you're doing all this and doing all that. Well, now we know why. There's a time frame to this, and I've explained that to folks, and I know that not a lot of people want to really understand that because again, it's not very um, it's not very popular, or it's not within the algorithm. I like to say that the algorithm determines your popularity. I do it for the algorithm. That's not a good look. You don't, yeah. You all know what I'm saying. Here is this. This is in Jordan. purportedly in Jordan. I'm going to say purportedly because they'll say, remember that all the missile strikes. Do you all remember when the people were deleted in Jordan and everything had been really messed up? Um, the U.S. officials had first said that no, everything was good. This is according to them. And then they had to recount and rebuff that statement because there was way too much imagery on out there to where they actually had to say something. It wasn't the fact that they said, "Oh, that impacted us." No, it impacted them. They lied about it, and then when the other satellite agencies were like, "Hey, what about this? What about that?" All the commercial imagery that they tried to intentionally um, delay. That's why they were asking the European space agencies and all these other imagery, especially with China. And China's like, no, we're not going to delay real time satellite footage. Why? Because we have contracts. We have contracts with people that rely on this real time satellite imagery that power a lot of our commerce and energy. It would be like, hey, US, can you please stop selling oil? Because if you're selling oil, that's only going to prolong this issue that we're having. And we're trying to limit our people from not being able um, to drive into forest fires, just throwing out the example, or drive into sinkholes. Because if our people keep driving into sinkholes, then guess what? The way that we can limit that is, don't do the gas. The U.S. is going to say no. Man, we got to sell this gas because that's our livelihood. That makes up a large majority of our economy. They're not going to stop. Same with China. They're not going to stop. That's technologies. Technologies making up a large majority of their economy. So while they're able to pull those shenanigans, because again, Europe does rely heavily on the US and the US economy, not so much with China. No, we have other countries, other nations, we have corporations depending on this. So now all of these images that are on out there, and you have to also remember a lot of people do have their satellite imagery. They do have their equivalents of their Starlinks. And you have to remember overseas, Starlink is not the only game in town. There are plenty of other Chinese manufacturing or Chinese products that are on out there. And the reason I say that is because when you go and you visit overseas, they have their little Chinese electronic stores, accessories. They'll have their equivalent, their Chinese equivalent to Starlink, and they'll have more than likely other, like at least another like three or four competitors, because that's what they do. That's how they are to grab that market share. So, in essence, the ability to censor images has been diminished. Just like yesterday, we were talking about GPS, and then China came up with its Betos solution because the targeting, or excuse me, the GPS was actually very inaccurate. And that's now what Iran is using, Betos, purportedly using. Because now their targeting has become more effective, i.e., they're making an impact, and those impacts are causing some either grave or serious to grave destruction. And I want to show you this because this, and I'm going to have an article here. This was as of yesterday, less than 24 hours. During the, or basically right after the meeting with the prime minister of the Eastern Mediterranean nation and Trump, literally right after the press conference that everything was good, you had this going on in Jordan. You have folks looking, they're seeing things occurring.
طلعت لي من هذول اثنين شو هذول اثنين جايات هذول أربعة لكل واحد اثنين جايبينه.
So I think I'll try to find a better one. So those are the air defenses. And then here's this one. This is from RT, so I use that as a grain of salt. That's as of today. They're waking up to explosions. And that's why I say, a grain of salt, because there's bias in everything. So just to give you that heads up.
יואו, מתחילה מלחמה. יואו, יואו. השמיים שלי צמאים.
So this was happening. And this was 10 hours ago. I'm not sure if there is any type of explosions. I believe that is actually old footage, so I'm just putting that footnote here for RT. I believe, though, that this is the actual footage, these interceptors, these ballistic missiles, Patriot systems, more than likely, they're saying here, from breaking 911, fire 10 Patriot interceptors to shoot them down. And again, that's not Iran's, like most sophisticated stuff for the most part. What it is, and I'm going to break down this attack just to put my where I'm gonna put my analytical hat on here, because you'll start to kind of see and understand these things. article. Try to give you all a little bit of an analysis here. So yesterday, of course, you had the meeting, okay? What always generally happens when they have that type of a meeting? What usually happens? That's a high level coordination. It's a high level reaffirmation of what the game plan is for the war that's being prosecuted, being fought. Iran is not dumb. So Iran is going to then respond and let folks know, okay, well, we're just going to show some patriots, or excuse me, we're gonna try to eat up some of your patriots in those responses to be a warning. Now, and I told you, I've explained that they do have technologies and capabilities to have a tremendous impact. We saw that less than 2 weeks ago. The problem that occurs, and that's just like everything everywhere else, is that even though you can have the technology, the production of that technology may be, a little waning. So you don't, in war, you have limited munitions. Everybody has limited munitions. You can never say, I have an endless supply. Don't get high on your endless supply, because that's not the case. Nobody has an endless supply of anything. One of my former jobs, one of my former military occupations was that I was an ammunition technician. And I used to literally count the bullets, spare rounds, thousands of bullets. I did that for a couple years, got mobilized to do that. It was interesting because it helped with your armory skills, maintaining ammo. Some ammo does have shelf lives and things of that nature, depending on the type of ammo. There's ammo that you actually have to decommission. You have to dermo, which is basically destroying it through controlled explosions. For a 19, 20-year-old, that was cool to see things like that. But there's a destructive power, there's a nature, and there are people that produce it, because we are one of the largest, if not the largest, weapons producer in the world. We're the hammer. And I say we, United States is the hammer. We live in the United States. Most of us that's here, most of us that's in the West. So the interesting thing that what they always try to say in terms of war and warfare, we have unlimited, we have lots, and if you understand, remember earlier this year and even last year, that's what people were bragging on. We got lots of ammunition. Well, what about with what is going on and what has gone on in Ukraine? Do you have enough? Are there any supply or fears of ammunition supply? And it's funny because when you recount his interviews, Trump's interviews, well, yes, but no, that's not going to happen. Yes, but no. if you understand what he always says, the yes, but, there's confusion. Let your yays be yays and your nays be nays, right? There's confusion. And what is happening is that you're now seeing a people that's in the midst of confusion. And when you're in the midst of confusion, the manipulation tactics become greater. This to me is the biggest time ever that these folks are now being manipulated at a level that we've never seen before. We already knew the dog whistles. Everybody knew about the dog whistles. We knew about it. They even started to be aware of it. They were getting sensitive about, well, that's not really the case. That's not really us. And then it's like, oh, see that dog whistle? See how you responded? See this, see that. And they started to realize that they were becoming acutely aware that we were sensing their dog whistles. Oh, yep, see that? There it is. Oh, yep, see that? So they started to get mad. They started to get even more insecure because then we were starting to say, yeah, you're getting played. This is, the war was first declared on April 1st, 2025, or April 2nd, or what, early April 2025, with all of the tariffs. We're going to tariff this. We're going to tariff that. That was the economic declaration of war. Because why? Because America's running out of money. Because why? Because this nation, they don't want to tell you about judgment, because judgment is the culmination of all of these activities. You got to pay for this. You got to pay for that. If you don't pay for this, or if you don't pay for that, then guess who is going to respond? Well, they are, because they're the number ones benefactors of, remember, all the stuff that they used to deflect and say, well, black folks, they're on all these government subsidy jobs, and they're welfare queens, and they're unemployment kings, all this stuff that they would always try to deflect on us. And the reality is that most of us really don't qualify for any good unemployment. So for our people, we do the little odds and ends jobs, quote unquote black jobs. What are the black jobs? Because what are they ultimately trying to do? They're not able to use criminality like that anymore, because again, too many body camera, too much footage, too many of our people that are actually up, awake, and alert. We may not understand the precision, right, of being able to tackle the problems. We may not really have that type of training or understanding, but we have enough of the wherewithal to recognize and see that something is wrong in that solution. Hey, I already called someone. I already made a call to a family member. They're going to be up here. How many times now folks are, sending out a quick text, hey, I'm over here and here. I'm in trouble. Use my location. Come get me. They share their location. Here's my pen. I'm right here. Swing by as soon as you can. It's an emergency. And our people, we show up. And we show up because we know that just the ability, we're not protesting. Don't get that twisted. Because the protesting isn't for us, it's really for them, to then be able to criminalize the gathering, which is the same peonage laws that they use. That's peonage. We already understand the mechanisms of why they try to get us mad. Oh, because see, they're criminals. And nobody can argue that. They can get mad. They can say, "Oh, that's not the case," and then you explain that to them, and then you show them the statistics, the figures. That's what they hate. They hate channels like this that will actually speak to you and provide some sort of analytical thought to be able to go on out and to function and to operate. Love, power, sound mind. We operate in the most highest power. You have a sound mind because you can think. And when you're able to think, you're able to analyze. When you're able to analyze, guess what you're able to do? You're able to have the wherewithal that the Most High has given you through the Ruach HaKodesh to see the situation, to understand the situation. And even if you can't belt out a word or a sentence, you can say, "Thank you, Father." You can say, thank you, Father, that you have allowed me to understand this. Father, I need your help. We used to, I used to always tell people, like, prayers don't have to be elaborate or fancy. Send up a quick prayer. Father, in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, please help me in this situation. I thank you, Father, for helping me in this situation. The reality is that they made the prayers very ceremonious. For us, it was always just common. Thank you, Father. Father, be with us. We're going into battle. Thank you, Father, that you're with us. And as we have been working through these elements, do you know who's been the most receptive? And what we have been saying and what we have been doing? It's been our people. It's been our children. Not just going to say our people. It's been our young men and young women. It's been the age group and demographic. Did you remember they said they have a problem with our young men, particularly young African American men. Wow, why is that? Because naturally we're the leaders. If our young men are educated, our young women get educated, and guess what? That's an educated generation. That's an educated class. Because what did they do? They threw out the order. Why did they throw out the order? Because they wanted us to be in a perpetual state of confusion. No, it's not for toxic masculinity. It's not to be, well, I'm a man hating, or excuse me, woman hating, man hating. That's stupidness. And the generate, yeah, and I get it. In the generation of the YN, yeah. Well, that's something that they market. It'll all go away. They know that they only have a little bit of time with our people. This is why they try to to do what they can in the hood, in these areas, because they know that what this is trying to do, well, if we can survive this judgment, if we can survive this period, maybe this isn't the period. Maybe this is a birth pain and we get another 80 years in this cycle. But like I also said, look, the Most High doesn't play about judgment. Our people, our sons and daughters, they hear the same message. Someone in their family has told them the same thing. Whether or not they choose to listen, that's in their heart. That's what that's how they have to present to the Most High. Just think about this. Think about how many folks Moses had to deal with that were YNs coming up out of Egypt. Come on now. Judgment does start here in the house. It does. And that's why we have to pray for our brothers and sisters. And that's what I was saying a while ago. When we're coming up out of captivity, it's going to take us time to heal. We cannot just be released to the wild because, again, we have to internalize our healing and our struggles. Doesn't that give you a different perspective? The YNs coming out of Egypt, doesn't that give you a different perspective? Man, listen, I would give you some water. I would let you pass through. But some of y'all be tripping over there. A lot of y'all Israelites be tripping. Man, you know how hard it was. Look, you didn't understand the struggles up in Egypt. Come on now. And they knew who they were coming up out of Egypt. They knew that they were the children of Israel. We have a lot more of our people spitting or pissing fire and vinegar. Because again, they don't know who they are. There's an indoctrination. We've been indoctrinated since birth. A lot of us are here because we have family members that have recognized this indoctrination. I know I have. I'm not just speaking on my own self, my own accord. I'm speaking because this was some of the things that my grandmother used to tell me, that my grandmother would show me. She just did it in a more abstract and fearful manner. But the intent was to recognize the system that's trying to harm you, so then you're able to work within that system. And if you don't see and realize and recognize that you're always going to be in a position, well, they'll try to harm you no matter what. That's more empowering than this going around acting the fool, as she would say, because that's what they look for. They look for the fools to be deleted. And again, I always tell this to people, calm down, because again, one of the things that is very, very interesting regarding war and warfare, amazingly, people start to figure that on out. Yeah, you'll have some petty crimes and things of that nature, but people will start to figure it on out when everybody's a little bit more vigilant. On top of that, the lack of movement and the lack of access causes people to really think about and really understand what has happened. How did we get here? I thought everything was cool until there's foreign troops on the soil. Oh, yeah. See, I'm trying to prepare our people for that, because I know the moment that happens, brains will be shut off, because people will be in survival mode. They'll be in fight and flight. They'll be doing the most. Well, it happens. It always does. You're at the end of your captivity. What'd you think it was going to look like? Well, it was just going to be wars and rumors of war, and no war was going to come to us, and nothing's going to end up happening, and we'll just get up on out of here. Look, the Most High literally said, we're getting up on out of here crying, looking thitherward, crying, weeping. Why? Because there are people that we lost. We've lost sons, daughters, husbands, wives, mothers, fathers. We got to prepare for that. If you didn't know, Trump brought the United States into war. Just like the Most High said he would. And in doing so, when we flee and we get up out of here, just as the scripture said we would be getting up out of here, I would suspect, according to the scriptures, via a time of war and conflict. No. No, I'm going to tell you this. Yeah, we've been at war, but you haven't been at war. Remember, this country said, this is what Babylon, look, I won't see the loss of children. Oh yeah, that was their pause that they initiated. Trump said time out. No, man, we're in the middle of a fight. You're getting your behind beat. I'm not going to time out. But isn't that what we see so many times? I used to watch World Star Hip Hop all the time. So I don't know if Iran has been taking notes on 2010 to 2012 World Star Hip Hop. Usually the subway scene. Yeah, I called you the N-word. What you going to do about it, N-word? What? That's all dude get beat down outside of a Popeyes. And he was real confident too when he picking up his 3-piece chicken. I'll get my 3-piece chicken meal. I'm gonna eat my buttery biscuit and just think about, yeah, I called those N-words the N-word. They looked at them like, okay. And he thought he was real. He thought he was slick. Oh, see, these Negroes aren't going to do nothing. He was 2 steps from the door. I said, how did these Negroes teleport? If you ever played Mortal Kombat Raven, Does that little teleportation move. Zoom. About to break out my N64. Just, my Super Nintendo. That my man teleported. Call me what? Damn. Call me what? His 3-piece dinner was ruined at that point. And and what happened was you could tell when the retaliation occurred, it was like this Caucasian dude, his soul got snatched. Because he was riding high. Oh yeah, I told these N-words a piece of my mind. Ha ha. He was about to get on his 4chan and Patriot Front and National Front and all those other front channels. This is what I did. And I didn't even have my messed up Boy Scout uniform on. Savoring my Popeye's chicken. I don't know if that red beans and rice is the sauce or my blood. But again, in classic manner, in classic fashion, as he was on the ground, of course, he tried to put his hands up. Hey, stop the fight. All right, I'm calling a timeout. Stop the fight. Let me get a timeout here. I'm clearly wounded. Oh yeah, he got a 3-piece. All right. I know that's probably Brother Eric. He got a 3-piece. He got that soda drip. He got that cherry Fanta. A strawberry. He gave him a 3-piece with the strawberry Fanta. Extra side of ketchup. Barbecue sauce. You name it. You want that butter biscuit? You knew what was going to happen. You should have gone to Chick-fil-A. Come here with that nonsense. Oh. I surrender. Stop. I mean, I can't surrender to you Negroes. Pause. Strategic pause. But that's them countlessly. All right, you done got me. You got me. But you want to know what though? You got to give credit to our folks. We don't say you got me. We don't do that. If you're still standing up, there's a problem. Because we know that the fight ends when you are face down. Either you're face down or your toes up. That's how a fight ends. Especially when you start that fight. That's why you can tell Trump has never been in a fight. Not a real one. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, folks are TikTok crazy. Yeah, they are. I seen. Yeah, you see that. You see They'll do that, but once you're down for the count and there's no timeout, because what that also provides is that means that there is some sort of, again, some sensory responses that have been able to provide the wherewithal to cause the timeout. And in their case, their timeout isn't to stop the fight. Their timeout is to reposition themselves so they can get a more advantageous advantage. Because a lot of our people will be like, okay, well, we're going to walk away. And, a lot of our people, if you haven't been trained in, how to disengage, you don't just turn your back right after you fight. A lot of our people will do that, and then they go down, they'll get pew-pewed or, in the back and things. That's how that works. Okay, I was able to get out of my stun, get out of my concussed state, concussed nature, so I can grab my weapon and let this shot off. And now a lot of our people, and I've seen this in these fights, a lot of our people are like, okay, I'm assuming that if you're going to talk crazy, you more than likely have a weapon. And like I had said, and in short fashion, I had said this, our people are not dummies. Look, we're just going to readjust. Okay, you're going to do that, then we're going to do this. You're going to do that, we're going to do this. And in quick order, it's an overwhelming fight. Because why? Because you have to assume that if that person had the gall and the wherewithal to say something, he'll also have the gall and the wherewithal to pull out a pew-pew. He was in fear of his life. Well, we both were in fear of our lives. Do you see how that works? And if you have a good order or lawyer, that lawyer can bring out those statistics. Why? Because this is the same behavior and mannerisms that would lead to a deletion. You probably won't win because, of course, this is you're trying to argue against the captor. You don't lay a hand on the overseer. That's how they get shocked. That's why they get shocked. You don't lay a hand on the overseer. No, boy. And then when that happens and they get hands laid on them. Just like and I tell you this because you have to understand, remember everything that they're doing, they're shell shocked because what Iran is doing, none of these other nations have done. You dare to raise a hand towards the all-powerful empire? God is on our side. We got the Bible. We got God. We got Jesus, a.k.a. Caesar Borgia. He's on our side. You see this white man? Have you not been brainwashed multi-centuries through the Renaissance? Do you see how we changed that image? Oh, I get it. See, Russia messed you all up. Putin messed you all up. He showed those. He showed what he had stashed away. With the Russian Orthodoxy stashed away, with the iconographs, the iconography, the pictures. You saw them black folks with their afros. Okay. Why do you think they're so? I told you. Why do you think they're so hard up on Russia? We got to do regime change with Putin. We got to do this. We got to do that. No, they tried to discredit it with the AI afterwards. They tried to discredit it and they tried to scrub all the images of the actual news story because I still remember the news story from 2021. And then that's where you have AI came through and actively scrubbed all the images from the website. If you've noticed, a lot of the materials that we had covered back in that time, they started to systematically disappear because YouTube and all of these other platforms, particularly YouTube, were trying to scrub all that content. Because if you don't, I don't know if people remember this, the ADL and everybody else was up in arms. And I remember we're kind of laughing because a couple of years ago, um, the ADL was threatening to come for a lot of these, platforms and channels, and even with Ron Dalton, brother Ron, they like he stays on the threat, but they don't do anything because they know that if they give more publicity, look, negative press is still good press, right? That's a Trumpism. So that was the active scrubbing, and then then in 2022, 2023, oh yeah, here comes AI, and the AI, well, they were already they've been actively using that to do what it is that they're doing. I was seeing something the other day regarding the patent for AI from back in like the 1950s, that they've been utilizing AI since the 1950s, and I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it, especially with these different, with DARPA and everything else. Who runs this world? A machine. I mean, we kind of laugh. I wouldn't doubt it. Have we literally been bowing to the image of the beast, to AI, to this thing for a minute, and now it's just going to be disclosed? I wouldn't doubt it. Well, I think the computers that they show us and they show us of, right? Because things that they don't want you to know, you won't know. Things that they don't want you to know and you do know and you're not supposed to know, well, guess what happens? You go, bye bye. Just for disclaimer, this is educational purposes only. Educational purposes only. We're just, talking about stuff. It may even be fake. Look, I don't know. Educational purposes only. I just say that I don't need any 3-letter agencies showing on up at my door, and from where I'm at to Guantanamo Bay, it is not that far. Do I get a phone call? We're still determining that. What what laws have I broken? Sit tight. We're still determining that. Oh yeah, and it says the data centers. Yeah, I haven't been popping these through. Well, Mashiahu says the data centers causing grid shutdowns, consuming major energy, and that's actually not just that's actually all throughout the United States now. Because we are having, and we're getting into these heat domes and things of that nature. But the question is, I always ask is, why are they having these heat domes? Why is the heat the way that it is? I would argue this. You have to have a certain level of moisture, right? And I'm trying to remember the word. There's a more scientific word for moisture. Please forgive me with that. The humidity. There you go. You have to have certain levels of humidity in the air, and everywhere has a level of humidity. Everywhere. You can get humidity out of even the most driest of the dry places. It has humidity. But the amounts of humidity, it then varies. And with that humidity, the changes of these conditions on out here, especially in the United States. Well, why are these rivers drying up? Why? Look, you've had now rivers drying up that should not be dry in the middle of summer because that humidity is being taken out, which makes me wonder, well, what are they doing? I believe that right now, just my opinion, they're embarking on the biggest desertification project ever. Because why? Because if you can move all of your plants and everything else indoor and, biocontrolled domes and things of that nature, not to get too terribly off track. Well, if we can't survive up here, why? Because exactly, Minister Rick, they are terraforming. And I'm not going to say this. Um, I'm not going to say that they're terraforming the earth, but they're going to be definitely terraforming the United States and Europe. That fire in Europe is so massive they can't even control it. It's just burning out of control. It's starting to hit like major towns. It's like 7 miles from Bordeaux in France. Well, I would say this: they're talking about the salinity in the water is actually rising higher, and based off of it, I'm not a obviously I'm not a an ecologist, I'm not an environmentalist, but I do know and understand that the higher your salinity content, the more you have um, the more that parasites can live because of the type of the environment that the water creates. And if your water isn't naturally flowing, or if your water isn't moving, right? Water does create the current. The current does have to, it filters. The current is an actual natural filter. So if your water level in your table is disrupted, you're not having the filter and the flow that you once had. Look, I'm here in I'm here in Florida, and they have the data centers on out here in Florida, and I know and I've seen even by my neighborhood. Literally, there's a street that goes into where I'm over at. It had a depression that was formed, and it took them It took them like 2 weeks to fix it. It took them about 2 weeks. They had to put a cone and like a little construction little apparatus fence or whatever there. Yeah, I heard about that too, Mick Jagger. They were trying to do something um in the Tampa region. They even had like a levee collapse, or like a phosphate thing had collapsed and had potentially contaminated a lot of the the water table here in the Tampa Bay area. And when you talk about Tampa Bay area, so Florida is basically a floating island that just has silt attached to it. It's an island. I mean, that's literally what it is. It's a floating island. Um, Cavities and all these other caverns that go into Florida, and because things are falling, those are air pockets. Air pockets are not good because what's up has to come down. So now they've been priming people for, hey, you may have sinkholes. You may have a lot of sinkholes. You may have sinkholes. So now that's like, in the Tampa Bay area, Tampa Bay, you have a lot of sinkholes. And that's not just in Tampa, that's also affecting Orlando. All parts of Florida, I would say up until about Gainesville, that becomes a little different in terms of, that northern Florida, southern Georgia area. But yeah, Pastor Rick Fletcher, yeah. Acidic waters are prime conditions for pathogens and parasites. Yes. Yes, they are. About two or three witnesses. There you go. Two or three witnesses. And that's the ideal. Why do you think now everybody's getting sick? Look, they had the CDC and the what? Health and Human Services, the one Robert F. Kennedy. This dude's talking about peptides, and people are getting sick from the water. It should be actually massa, right? Massa oppressor. Make America sick again to do what? To oppress? Yeah, NASA's right. Or they need, or they need to do MASSA, like traditional massa, right? Make America stay sicker again. You don't have natural foods. You don't have foods with seeds. You don't have, the things that actually give life. So your body is not even really getting the nutrients that it needs to have. So if you're nutrient deficient on things, guess what? You will then have sickness. Yeah, they were having food recalls like every couple of months. And you're right, Ninja Firewolf. They're not doing food recalls. So that's why people are saying, look, we don't know how sick we are. The Most High literally said in Joel chapter 3 that he'll cleanse our blood. Because why? Because we're sick. We sick, boss. Boss, we sick. I'm sorry. I have been going on one for over an hour. My goodness. I didn't even get a chance to really talk about the content that I wanted to talk about. Let me get on back here. Saudi Arabia joins U.S. allies, or excuse me, joins U.S. military strikes on Iranian proxies. I put that. link in the article about an hour ago. I have been on one. Sorry, family. It came. Let me get into this article. Excuse me. Um, the rare joint operation in Iraq underscored the risk that the Iran conflict could expand. It's already expanded. It doesn't matter. It's expanded with Zelensky joining the war, firing on Iran. Oh, well, we didn't mean to. It's expanded. It came after Iran fired missiles at a U.S. base in Jordan. And that was today. So this is from Tara Kopp, Alex Horton, Susanna George, and Ellen Francis. This is from, again, the Washington Post. Fighter jets from the United States and Saudi Arabia conducted joint military strikes overnight, targeting Iranian proxy forces in Iraq, officials said, marking what appeared to be Riyadh's direct entry into the ongoing conflict between Washington and Tehran. So a lot of things have happened. You had a first strike, a preemptive first strike with Iran. And then you had Saudi Arabia joining forces, going hand to hand with the United States. The vassals are now aligning. It isn't just U.S. now, it's all the vassals. Like I had already said, though, Jordan was an Eastern Mediterranean nation vassal to begin with. That's how that nation survived. And now you understand that what they're doing, they consolidated not in the Eastern Mediterranean nation, that would be too convenient, but in Jordan. Jordan was always the buffer zone. I knew that even when I was there in Jordan many, many times. That's what their job was. Their job was to always be a buffer zone. Because in Jordan, there's like zero economic interest nor activities besides them saying that they're quote unquote the Holy Land. Do you see that? Do you see why people are invested into that lie? Because Jordan gets billions of dollars a year from the United States. To have that lie. And it's not just the US, it's also Europe and other countries in the Middle East, to include UAE and Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain and Kuwait. They know their jobs, they know their roles. But what it does, and I want you to kind of delve a little bit deeper into what I'm saying. The fact that everything is now being exposed in terms of their role, it really means that they don't have anything. They're putting all their cards out. They're breaking everything in case of emergency. No, dude, because here's the thing. You can't let the cat out the bag with that one. You can't bring the cat back in. You can't do it. Once that cat's out the bag, now they have to go full throttle because now they're racing against the clock with their own people. There's a complex dynamic to this. So for people that say that they're Muslims or Islam, and then they're working with people that are diametrically opposed to Islam, well, then what's going to quickly end up occurring, yeah, the people that start with Z and not just zombies. What ends up occurring is that now there's apostasy. And in Islam, that's like the worst of the worst. Like, okay, man, you are going to hell. That's how they look at that. Everything else can be kind of, abrogated away, but no, you're going to hell now. That is, we're on the wrong side. Because why? Because now all of Islam is now at a particular crossroads, because for by and large, what people don't want to say, man, Trump destabilized Islam. In one fell swoop, Trump destabilized it. This was one of the actual strategies and thought processes that had been discussed for years. You do that, then everything falls apart. So what do you think is inevitably going to happen? Because literally Turkey just said it, that they are the protectors and defenders of Islam. They said it a couple of years ago. Why? Because they saw this happening. They understood that trigger gets pulled. Who then effectively jumps in? I don't think you all are understanding this. Let me explain this to you. Turkey now will have an existential threat, because now it's not just an Islamic threat per se. They would also have a European threat. Zelensky, do you see that? Do you see how that goes? Zelensky's on the other side of Turkey, the other side of the Black Sea, already causing damage and issues. Saudi Arabia jumps into the fight because Jordan cannot condemn anything, because now Jordan is actively hosting, more than likely, a CENTCOM forward element headquarters stood up, because they had to evacuate. More than likely, they evacuated Qatar. Hey, we got to get up on out of here. We're done. The mission's done in Qatar. We got to leave. And now on top of that, who do you think is going to be the first ones to get invaded? Brother Asaph just talked about this the other day with Gallipoli and World War I. Because why? Because they're going to need to have access to where? To Africa. Via what? The Suez. Because once Turkey throws in, then Egypt has to throw in too. Because the Al Azraq, the second, greatest thing, I think, in the Islamic thing, don't quote me on it, they're going to pop off. And that is going to then be all of Northern Africa. So now the Mediterranean is going to be under threat. All of the Mediterranean. That includes the Strait of Gibraltar. Hey, we got to shut this down because why? Because everything that's going to happen, these folks are going to come in because here's going to be the rationale. We have to control the strait because all of this stuff is because of the U.S.'s fault. And not just the U.S., it's also the UK and things of that nature. It's going to have fissures beyond we can't even imagine. What will Spain and France do? Hey, listen, we're just trying to make sure that we're having a global peace. We cannot be on the side of the United States. We have to control our own interests. It's a third party, but in doing so, we have to make sure that the Strait of Gibraltar. And I'm speculating, but I'm kind of giving you a lot of these analytical thought processes that was always the design over at these high levels, especially when you're talking about these different institutes, foreign affairs, and things of that nature. Shalom, brother Asaph. If you're feeling up to it, I did put the link out there in the chat earlier. Shalom, Minister Rick.
How are you this morning? I can't text fast enough to deal with the thoughts you got coming fast and furious. I just have a question. I have to go old school and just orally. With all these events expanding this war and all these areas getting involved in the conflict, might Africa get the breathing room to build and be much like the United States with the whole rest of the world blown up and our factories here and things intact? Africa will be placed to move up to ascendancy and get itself together and allow time for our exodus and infrastructure build while the rest of the world is burning up?
Well, and I would say absolutely, because you have to understand they don't have any breathing room. And you have to realize the more that these conflicts are going on, the more breathing room that they have. All right, brother Asaph, thank you. We're keeping you up in prayer. Hallelujah. Continue to recover. Hallelujah. And what is happening? Look, it's when people say it's spiraling out of control. Well, of course it is. Of course, these events are spiraling out of control, and guess who's going to be stuck? Europe is. These chain of events, these are highly plausible. It may not go the way, but look, Algeria has a lot of influence. Guess who also has a lot of influence? So does Libya, and so does Egypt. And Egypt has a tremendous amount of influence. So Egypt will then influence from literally the Red Sea over to the Atlantic Ocean, i.e. Morocco.
On the spiritual level, let me ask you, do you think the Most High is dealing with the judgment on both of the major, two of the three major, well, all three of the major Abrahamic religions for their participation in the slave things they've done to his people and using them against each other to foment this judgment?
Yeah, this is exactly, yes. This is actually going to be a battle royale of sorts. So again, what do you think America's role in this? Everybody's going to be hating everybody else, but everybody's then going to hate America for starting this war, for getting things out of control. And then people are going to say, I'm going to put a stop to it. We're going to put a stop to this.
America, essentially, they destroyed their own control grid.
Well, again, if you're a country that, okay, so here's the thing. It's a, so if you're swimming in debt up to your eyeballs, okay, it's like this. Well, you know what? I'm just going to set the house on fire so I can get me an insurance claim. You, you see what I'm saying? I got to set my own house on fire because I won't have any type of creditors. But instead of setting my house on fire, I'm going to set the neighbor's house on fire.
Well,
Because the neighbor's asking for money, and then that neighbor is I'm going to accuse that neighbor of doing this and this and this. Do you see how that goes? So when everybody else's stuff is burnt down, I'll burn down some of my stuff. I'll maybe burn down my porch.
Well, that's the doctrine of their secret societies, the phoenix rising out of the flames of just the immolation and coming back, the Ouroboros, the snake eating his tail. That's a part of their whole occult ideology.
Exactly. But the problem is, that's why things are going to shift east, i.e., towards Asia and things of that nature.
As the Bible states.
Mm-hmm. Because why? Because everything is too volatile in that area. And it'll continue to be volatile. Oh, well, they know that destruction's coming, but they didn't know when it would be here. We didn't know when it was going to be here. We always said, hey, prepare. We know the Most High's moving. Prepare, the Most High's moving. He's doing what he's doing. We didn't know.
Well, we are getting a reprieve here because I know for a while, Trump, while he's involved overseas, his domestic depredations are limited by the same budget constraints that he has dealing with a fiat currency, and it's changed to an actual monetary currency covered by tangibles and real elements. So the Most High has boxed Babylon into a place that he said in prophecy. But the question is how we capitalize on it and get our people up to speed. I like what you said about the young people because they are absolutely ready for it. I think that should be an area of focus. I believe that we really should concentrate on them. And sometimes we neglect this area to our demise, to our detriment.
Well, yeah, because they're going to be the generation coming up, and you got to remember, they've already been basically neglected. I'm telling you, they're not learning what they need to learn. They're not being educated. They're being trained. There's a difference between training and education. That's it. They're not being educated. I know.
They're trained to be compliant and to sit still and to do that again. That's a lot of that came out of the University of Chicago, the Rockefellers there. That was the purpose of education. They didn't want critical thinking was not in the equation, and they try to use to dumb them down with social media, not realizing that social media is also the what the free press was supposed to be. The social media has come, and they're trying to lock that down.
Yeah, well, exactly. So again, how this will work, people will quickly figure this on out, and then obviously media will be locked down. So, and it won't be in a way that you'll say, oh, well, I can never get information. No, they'll quickly, channels like this, channels like Yacoba, Sister Shonda, you name it, all throughout our little sphere of influence, they'll be locked down. Because why? Because we don't have the influence, and nor do we have the algorithm that people will just try to stay up or speak up or do anything else. It'll be gone. So and again you come on in here and someone has said it, I think Iliella Salit. Ooh, I'm messing that up. He was saying, look, there's 290 some people that were in, and only 7 likes.
Wow. Yeah, they manipulate that algorithm tremendously. What had happened yesterday, a very good friend of mine, these people all around my age, they're Generation X and boomers, but they've acquired a few things. We got all these resources now, more than we have had capabilities in terms of engaging the media. And this brother's got a great heart. He got this old factory building that he got from the people. The family closed down this factory, and white folks, and basically because the kids didn't want to deal with it. So he inherited these buildings at ridiculously low prices. So he's filling this up with median schools. And I said, well, we're going to have to engage the community. It's all to put these resources together. But what kids have you actually talked to and things like that? And he said, well, I put the word out. So we had all these luminaries here and all this equipment. We had drones in the air. We had digital cameras and everything like that. And I said, where are the kids? So I administered around in that area. So let me walk around the block. Since when I ministered, the demographic totally changed. People said, well, it's elderly people on this block. But a woman directed me to another block and said, well, this is where the young people are. I got one mother said, well, they didn't contact us. They didn't put out flyers. We didn't really know. I said, they're coming like the program idea. A lot of times in the organization, the brain trust gets in that mode of not engaging with the people. So I said, well, I invited the woman to come, and she came and she brought her 2 children, and the children were looking at the drones and things like that. And we're talking about educating, the type of education you're talking about our children. Then finally, I noticed the lady, she started taking pictures. She was the connection. I could see, God showed me the community. We had a video projection on the wall. She was taking the pictures. Well, I have to do that. So I want my children to be educated and be involved in this technology. So what we're trying to do is get all these resources. What we do in the short term to prepare us for the long term or the longer term of getting up out of here, so we can bring something in there. So that's a little what's going on. We have to be careful that we don't get in the place that this man was as the organization, the brain trust of these organizations. We got to connect to the street on some level, whatever we have to do to extend ourselves to them, or we're no better than the churches that gather in these buildings and don't do anything in the community.
And again, that is because we're dislocated. That is it's hard, but the technology is actually making it a little bit easier, even though it's physically harder. But again, this was always where this thing was going to be at, in terms of how we would be looking at this present day in time. And I have Brother Fast Nickel. Shalom, Brother Fast Nickel, because I want to talk to you real quick, because I don't know if you were following those markets over in Korea.
Shalom, brother.
Shalom. No, I was up until 2:00 working on a website, and I literally just woke up.
Well, brother Fast Nickel. The stability that you have with AI. This is all connected, because we're going into a different dynamic. And I tell people, when you go into different dynamics, there's going to be population drift, population changes, i.e. population movements. They're going to look at this blip in time as, how did all these folks up and leave this particular area? Because again, what people don't understand is that when you have a major population and demographic change, you are currently physically at, if you stay, and let's just say 30 to 40% of that population leaves, that's actually catastrophe. It's catastrophe. You don't have the people that were once there to own and operate buildings.
It's a brain drain.
It's not just a brain drain. That is a resource drain, because the lack of the human resource, the human capital, then messes up the actual industrial physical capital.
What you do is you disrupt the ecosystem. We think of ecosystems like with animals and insects, but the same with people. If you just, like you just said, if you just remove that large amount, you've just disrupted the ecosystem of that community.
Yeah, exactly. You would literally have ghost cities overnight
Yep.
because people would have to consolidate to other places in order for those resources to be there. Yeah, a lot of people be like, "Well, we could just be off the grid and everything else." Um, People don't understand that when folks do those types of off the grid, environmental, all that other stuff, that's nice. It makes for good for good social media content. You can make your little farms and your homesteads, and it's great. The problem is they don't account for other countries invading them.
Not in a land under God's curse. You can't set up. You can't take that.
Mm-hmm. So you may have done everything. Hey, I got my preps. I did all that, and blah blah blah.
We
If your
see
country is down, if your resources are down, look, who would it? Who wouldn't? Do anything? That remember the whole thing with Trump and his pause. Oh, pause, time out. I got to get restocked with these Patriots. Man, no. Let me get some more ammo in this fight. Time out. No, the moment that look, I don't know about you. I'm still firing my pew pew. That's your bad. Well, let me just do a gentleman's agreement, and for the sake of chivalry, man, get out of here.
Karis, brother Karis, we are in 1914. This is the start of World War One. It's not World War Two.
Yes,
because all these technologies they had generals still believing in the infantry charge in World War One when the machine gun was there. You couldn't fight that way. Then they devolved to trench warfare. We had in World War One, we had the influx of the plane, just like the drone is in there, changing the battlefield. All these things to get around the infantry charge, the tank came on. So when the game changers, all these powers that were built under the old order come into game changers, they're not prepared. They'd have to be prepared to take massive casualties. You can't do the things that you used to do to win the old wars, or get your people to die in these quantities to obtain your ends on the ground. And what's waiting in the wings is those Chinese have some battling robots that are walking around like people. So at the time when the game is changing, that's the time for the new powers to rise up with the strategies, while you have people with their vanity entrenched in the old technology, the old methods, and thinking they'll be able to do the old things they used to be able to do when it can't be done.
What say you, brother Fast Nickel?
The two things I wanted to mention yesterday, but I didn't get a chance to, is one, maybe, one day next week or whatever you feel appropriate, you should do a show to just do a look at where we're at with the Economist cover.
Mm-hmm.
I'd
have to bring on Yacoba for that
what has happened and what where we're at. Also, Monday night.
Yeah.
So you were talking about markets. Monday night, I was showing a video. It was an hour video. Peter Schiff. For those who don't know, Peter Schiff is a big gold bug, but his dad was arrested because he went against the grain, and they arrested him. You can look him up, but he was just talking about the markets and how Tesla is down big, that Elon Musk is down like $100 million. I think, it's not hurting him, but he's down a lot, and also SpaceX, like SpaceX is down big. So he was just talking about the markets.
Oh yeah.
Well, brother Fast Nickel, as not asking financial advice and not receiving anything you say as financial advice, I got a government buyout company, last installment coming like at the end of August. And where would you put Exodus money, that something you need that's can move out with you if you have to leave suddenly? Where would you place it? Again, not asking for financial advice, but
So
just saying.
so when so the you're talking about like a 401 or some type of pension money, correct?
Well, it'll be literally be a check that's coming. They
But
owe
but
it on
but
that.
it's coming from the source is like a 401k or a pension of some
No,
sort.
it's coming from OPM. No, this is coming from the actual, literally the postal service. Yeah, that was part of their union buyout.
Right. Okay, but that's a union pension, whatever. So the one thing about that is when you take that money, you're gonna have to pay tax on it.
Texas. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So as an example, I'm actually helping somebody right now in a similar scenario where to what I'm helping with this person is you want to put it you want to move the money into a gosh, I always forget
Non
this
non
term. Hold on.
taxable entity.
Not yeah, but there's a name for it. Hold on a second, because I always I don't know why.
You
Hold on,
talking
give
about
me
a
one
trust?
second. No. You want to move it into a qualified account
Okay.
so that they don't hit you with a 30% tax bill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so this is why people think 401ks are great, and they are great to some degree because you say, okay, I'm going to put 3% of my money, and a company is going to match that 3%. But to think about it, you're not paying tax on the money. But if you're going to have to pay tax, I rather pay tax today, not on money 20 years from now, because it's going to be worth less. So,
Yeah.
people are putting into 401ks, but when they go to take that money, that's when they're going to get hit with the tax.
Yep.
So in that case, you want to move it into a qualified account so that you can uh, of minimize your tax burden.
Okay. Now, qualified accounts, that'd be something the banks would have set up. That and that can't the accounts qualify as no non-taxable until you take the money out. Is that what that means?
So it'll be qualified in the sense that instead of getting hit with that big bill, maybe you're taking out the so just using round figures. Let's say you had $100,000 check, right? Instead of collecting that $100,000 and paying, you know, having the government take 30,000 of it, you put it into account where you're taking out a little at a time, and you're just being taxed in small increments. But also, at that point, that's the whole beauty of life insurance. When you take money from your life insurance, you put into it or borrow against it, you technically have to pay it back, but you don't have to pay it back. Like when you look at the rich, the wealthy, there's so many loopholes that they that they get around. That's why I laugh when they were complaining about Trump and his taxes, because the truth is none of them pay taxes. The wealthy just don't, people who just have understanding of money, they pay little to no taxes.
Well, the structure that they put in with this whole capital gain system, that's the whole thing why we have to establish our own system, because this game is rigged over here. And we have to go by the rules and get the loopholes on that. And they changed it going real time,
Well,
just like a
and I do want to kind of caveat this for people, and I have a little bit of a different perspective and understanding because I look at it like this: what you are investing today, and this isn't financial advice or investment advice and things of that nature. How does that hold up in a market that's crashing?
Yeah.
Just like think
Very
about
true.
this. Think about this. if a couple weeks ago, right, with Tesla, not just Tesla, SpaceX, everybody was all in for SpaceX, all it. And to me, I look at it like this. The whole reason that this market is melting up is to crash people on out of the market. It's to crash people out.
Exactly, because what do we said? 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy.
Be happy, exactly. So
They got to do it some kind of way.
Yeah, I'm look. We're literally here trying to beg folks, asking folks to help with this hospital project initiative that will help to secure 62 acres of land over in Ghana. Over in Ghana. And guess what that does? It establishes a relationship. Because at the end of the day, when people are flat broke, it's not going to be your money that saves you. You want to know an example of money? You want to know an awesome example of money? Because I wanted to talk about this. I was going to talk about this earlier. But this is a perfect segue. They used to say in Europe, you're as rich as an Argentinian or an Argentine. Argentina had more money and more wealth than most European countries. They're on it. Argentina right now, 1 peso or $1 equals like 14 or 1,500 Argentinian pesos. And that's all because of bad decision makers, because of dictatorships and other bad governmental decisions over the course of 100 years. Well, I don't know if you realize this, but the United States is actually going into that trajectory. One invasion at a time. Nobody does business with Argentina. Trump had to bail out Argentina last year with $20 billion for some beef because the U.S. is lacking in beef. Cheap import because we have to export. So you get in a cheaper import because your exports, that's how this thing has been offset. Argentina right now, instead of actually eating meat from traditional sources, and that includes even pork, even though I don't eat it.
Yeah. Well,
do you know what they're having to eat? Donkey meat.
Wow.
Donkey meat.
With all that land and all the agricultural land, they have to eat donkey meat.
Yeah, because it was a mismanagement of funds.
Well, see,
if you're pulling any of your money into any of these hedge funds, these brokerages, these accounts and things of that nature, at the end of the day, when this system collapses, they're pushing their money over into other safe havens. And guess what? Who are you going to try to sue?
The suckers will be stuck in these markets and all these things.
Well, yeah, and there won't even be a market because who are you going to who are you going to sue? Who are you going to go after?
My best monetary investment over the last year was in that container going over there, because that was something real and tangible that people used that bought us equity on the continent. And what I did prior to retirement, I started buying all the real things, not just being secure in the money or being a money changer. What is all the equipment that I'm going to need to do whatever I want to do? Generators, I got solar generators and things. And these things, I'm actually serving the Most High by lending them out. I got 2 generators out on loan now in the south suburbs of Chicago. But it's buying equity. It's stuff that's useful for our people that we can do. And that's the thing. That's my tendency. But I wanted to know, because of the mobility question you talked about, going to Africa. We're not going to be able to take all these tangible things necessarily, and they have those things in Africa. What do I need to do to have liquidity that can travel to the continent, as opposed to having anything? Right now, I don't want no long-term investments in Babylon. I'm not trying to have anything here. I have no confidence in the market. it's manipulated, all these elements and things, and these Babylon rules, which they change. The game is rigged over here. I'm not trying to do in a rigged game, but I do want to have the resources, and the community is used just because we got tools around there. It's used this here, but stuff that the investment's going to bring our people together that we can move. That's what I'm really interested in.
So you definitely always want to have assets, which is what physical assets. That's why if you bought a house 20 years ago for 100 grand and they tell you that house is worth 250 grand, it's not because you did anything elaborate to the house. It's because the dollar depreciated in value. That's why the house is worth more today than 20 years ago when you bought it. Now, the thing to also remember is this. So they call the dollar king dollar, right? So the reason why it's called the king dollar is because if you put the dollar on a scale of 1 to 10, and so you put the dollar at the 10, and you put all other currencies except for the 5 or 6 that are valued higher than the dollar, like the British pound. The British pound, I think, is $1.63 to the dollar. So taking the 10 or so currencies that are valued more than a dollar. Let's just look at the dollar. So, we talk about the Guyanese, the money from Ghana as an example. So let's say all the other currencies are at the zero level, and now the dollar has depreciated. Well, all that does is when the dollar appreciates, let's say the dollar goes from 10 to 8, that just means the other currencies are still at zero, but it takes less to equal the value of a dollar. And so the biggest problem is most of these countries, I shouldn't say all, but most of these countries, they use the dollar in addition to their local currency. Until they get themselves in a position where they unpeg from the dollar, they're always going to be controlled by the dollar.
Okay.
But do you now know what's happening right now? The dollar is actually being unpegged because Trump is still trying to have what Trump is trying to do. He's trying to actually take out the liquidity of the dollar. That's what's been happening since literally last year. That was the whole point of the tariffs. The whole point of the tariffs is, hey, I don't want you to really use the dollar because if you're using the dollar, we have to account for those dollar transactions because then accounting for those dollar transactions, there has to be some sort of a parity or leveling system. And what a lot of people were trying to do is saying, no, my goods, I have more goods, I have more services than you all do. Africa can easily say that. I have more goods, I provide more services than you all do. Why is my currency being stymied according to the dollar? That is now the response that BRICS is having. BRICS is now
Well,
creating that alternative response. A lot of these transactions that are happening right now, especially with the oil, especially over there in the Strait of Hormuz, that's why the U.S. had to throw up a blockade. Because they knew that as soon as transactions were being made for oil outside of the U.S. dollar, then the dollar's strength, which is its value, starts to go down.
well, at that the last vestige of the strength of the dollar once off the gold standard was the petrodollar. Other than that, it's
Yes.
the worth of the dollar is based on, and I quote, the full faith and credit of the United States, which number 47 is putting dynamite, blowing up, detonating the full faith and credit of the United States. So there we have it. The
So
problem. That's
so
why they
why
want to go to
so
war.
why do you think all these refineries are being blown up? Why do you think they're targeting all the oil infrastructure, global oil infrastructure, right? They're actually real, coming to terms because we're all seeing this. Oil prices are now spiking. Gas prices are now spiking because wherewithal. Here's the thing. In reality, our money is worthless. I'm just going to let you know that. In reality, our money is actually worthless
Just
It all
perception.
depends on what can be traded, what can be assumed, what can be received, and how those wires would then be calculated before everything crashes on out. Because again, yes, the parity, and that's the parity principle that it's the price parity principle that Brother Fastnickel was talking about. But that is, again, assuming, and you have to always assume all things are constant, all things are relatively the same as it is. We don't have that relativity anymore because the more that the U.S. is doing these actions, this is why people are getting mad, especially these economists that know the more you do, right? If you lose the war, and that's why Trump has to literally say all the time, and he knows he's lying. Everybody knows he's lying. He even, but they can't press the lie like that because again, the lie is what is sustaining the dollar. So they have to lie and lie and lie and lie some more. Oh, well, we're getting this done. We're doing that, getting that done. Because if you are a foreign investor, well, how long can I keep my dollar in here? Because if I bought this bond, if I bought this and at this high interest rate, and then it falls, and then it falls again, well, what you paid for and then what you lose it to, right? You buy that house for $100,000, and then now that house can only sell for 25,000. Well, that's now a $75,000 loss. That then is a materialized loss.
The
Now
currency
you can
value is based on
have the
stability.
worth.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
The currency's
So yeah,
value
so
is
you can
based
have.
on stability.
Go ahead.
The currency value is
Exactly.
based on stability, and this and we show it. We are the destabilizing factor. So that's what it really goes down. That's at the end of the day, that's all it has left. People who do things financially want to know, they want a stable situation where they knew the rules. The dollar is basically a casino chip. And they want to know, are the games fair in the casino? Can I actually go in there? Can I play there? And guess what? Another casino opened in town, and the U.S. is not giving payouts. The Bricks Casino is the new game in town, and people can win there.
Well, looking at the example that Brother Karras just made with the housing, most middle America.
Because people are just comfortable with just being in the casino. Bingo. They're always losing in their odds. Go ahead, Brother Fast. We cut out. Materialize. It's actually lost and a realized gain. So if you're taking the loss, right? So even though something may be valued high, right? Hey, this boat, it's valued at this amount. It's valued at $400 million. Well, it only sold for 150 million. Then that's actually the worth. It's 150 million. Okay. And then what they value or try to have that valuation, people speculate on that valuation. Well, if it's 250 million more, then I should be able to make money off of that speculation. And then when it actually sells, it's actually not worth what it sold. So then people lose their money because the valuation wasn't actually there. Sorry, go ahead, Brother Fat Sniffle.
No, you bring up great points. They're doing their speculations, but most Americans, their wealth is their home, and they buy a home thinking like, hey, 20 years from now, or when I'm ready to retire, this house is now going to be worth 3 or 4 times what I paid, and that's going to help me to survive. And God forbid, now the housing value just plummeted. People are going to be in panic because that's all that they have is wealth.
Yeah, when and that's what America is on right now is stocks that's all speculative, and then real estate, which is housing, which is overvalued. It's all overvalued. So now you may have a house that actually may, well, the realtor's going to tell you this house is going to be worth this amount of money, and 5 years ago it was only 100,000, and this year it's 750,000. Well, that's actually not sustainable.
So
And then yeah, go ahead.
they're doing everything that Torah prohibits. That's, I think, I look at like the most highest economic system. See, that's what we have to pivot to, the most highest economic system. It was land based. Land was allocated to each tribe. It didn't. It passed. It could only be sold for 50 years, a year of jubilee. See, you could be eternally poor because your family might, get janky, but 50 years, when the year of jubilee came, you got all your assets back. So that was a more equitable system. And the closer we can get to that, as well as the diet and the things that God prescribed in Torah, the better our economic system will be. And we have to operate that, and that'll be a nation being born in one day. Because this Babylonian system is messed up.
It's not just doing that, but in order for it to really work, you have to decouple from the West or the U.S. system and be your own standalone system. Because because right now everything is dictated by them and their policies.
Yeah, and
This is
and
why
the
most people.
reality is it's resources. It's really just resources and allocating resources. The way that the dollar was that you are trapped into a system, and that system wasn't actually a real system. What made the system a real system is if you deviate from my system, then I will bring in an army and I'll destroy you because you deviated from my system.
The protection
Full
racket.
faith and credit. Full faith and credit. And that's why when I tell people, I'm like, what Trump did, this was, he put everything out there on the table. He doesn't have any cards. He always doesn't say he has cards. No, he doesn't. This was it. This is the final play. When in Iran, what Iran was doing, and we explained what Iran was doing when we showed and we were breaking it on down, we said all Iran is doing is they're waiting for the U.S. to strike. And they were just going to wait and wait and wait and wait. And they did. And they waited. They waited for almost 50 years. They said that. That was it. They waited for almost 50 years because the U.S. always had to take over Iran because Iran was always carrying a substantial amount of wealth. And they were the counter to the Saudis to be able to have global, worldwide domination of the, Persian Gulf, Arab Peninsula, oil region. Because with Iran still there was still a competitor that could then still move energy resources over into the East, i.e. India, i.e. Indonesia, Philippines, you name it. So, with that being said, this is, when people don't like to hear this, but this is actually the end of the empire.
Yes.
This is the end of our captivity. We're looking at the end of our captivity. What do you think? What happens after this? Like, I have to ask people, what do you tell me? What do you think happens after this? You tell me. How do you think we're getting back? Because you don't get back from this until there's a change in the economic model that's so drastic that you're instituting slavery, if not by another name or another, principled action.
Well, Brother Karras, can we, much like the denizens of that Eastern Mediterranean nation, establish a different economic system that they perform when they're dealing with each other? I think we might see a little bit of it with these boycotts and when these people summarily make these declarations on YouTube and other platforms, and our people by the Ruach HaKodesh or spirit or the total consensus decide to boycott these entities and see the economic effect. Can we operate as a nation economically with our own quasi system within the Babylonian system, as we refer to exit.
I don't want to. I don't want to be negative, but the reality is you're not going to be able to operate in this Babylonian system. The Babylonian system, the door is already closed. It's already shut. When Trump declared war on Iran, that was it. So whatever you're trying to do, however you're trying to do things in terms of saving whatever you could save, you're at where you're at. Have you all noticed that literally we've all been kind of stuck on pause?
Yep.
All of us. Everybody has been stuck on pause for, look, you can't try to get a job. You may see other people getting a job. You may have other folks getting jobs. That's great. But the rate of jobs are not there. They have it was like $100,000 job or 100,000 jobs, for like a population that they've now come on out and they said over 100 some odd million Americans, the worst since literally the Great Depression, are not working.
Well, my economy right now is based on blessing Israel. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm counting on. I'm not counting on anything from Babylon, but I'm using the resources I have to bless Israel and counting on the promises of God that said he's going to bless those who bless Israel. So that's all with the youth or whatever money is spent that comes into my hands is to put that, cycle it into the people and have the Ubuntu, the operation with the people, where we can perform services for each other with not necessarily money being exchanged. And we've always had an alternative economy within our community. That's why we're not cringing, even under these circumstances that are crushing everybody else. We just have to do that and have peace among each other. I mean, that's what I mean by a system within the system.
Yeah, so you can have definitely informal microeconomies, based off of services, but it can only go so far if so let's just say this. It's just like the Great Depression, right? Which is basically where we're at and what we're in. But for us, we have to be very, very creative in terms of who would then be busting in things like, let's just say, for your example, areas south of Kankakee, Illinois. You know what I'm saying? Those folks that are getting produce and things of that nature from the country into the city, right? And I know that they'll try that with food banks, food pantries, and things of that nature. That's great. That's good. But that's not going to be sustainable. Now, community gardens, that may be sustainable, right? That is really the only sustainable alternative until they say, hey, well, I still have to pay a lot of the taxes on this land, or this land gets converted back to Babylon, the city, to the county. You get what I'm telling you? So that's what I'm trying to say. All of these resources and other abilities to help one another. Yes, we would like to do that, but it goes to a point in time that literally the Most High said, hey, Moses, tell the people, get their stuff packed on up, get ready to go, because these folks are about to hit this final judgment. And after that happens, you don't stay. You got to go. And I would say this, I would say we're really to that point to where it's like, we know what's going on. There's no Moses here. No one is a Moses. We weren't going to have a Moses. This is going to be the Most High. And when the Most High starts to show you how people will be released, then folks need to go. The release isn't going to be a release like the last Exodus. The release, in my opinion, is what you're seeing right now with Ghana and what Ghana had done to petition the nations. Hey, we need to have fairness. We need to have this. Please let our people go. Please let our people go. Have you noticed that everything is ratcheting up before September's UN conference? Well, that's the big one.
As a people,
go ahead.
As a people, I'm just trying to keep us eating and living in peace among each other until then, until the ships come. Just keep us eating and not being getting the plagues, stepping outside of Babylon enough to avoid the plagues that are coming even in our midst. That the blood is on our doorpost, and we're pivoting to the Most High, as He prophesied that He was going to cleanse us, our bodies and our spirits, that He was going to sanctify us. That's really what I'm on in terms of investment.
Yeah, listen, I totally get it. I totally understand, especially when we have seen these traditional sources of the mechanisms of how money has literally just changed and has been changing when it feels like overnight. And the great thing about the Most High with our people, He's going to provide a way. He's going to put it on people to be led to do certain things, to work and function in certain capacities. But at the same time, we also have to remember that our activities in Babylon are going to be limited more and more and more because because again, what the Most High is also doing, He's also waning us off the system. Hey, listen, I'm sorry, you can't be comfortable. Hey, listen, and that's where we're all at in this time. Because yes, we would love to do a lot more. I would love to do a lot more. And I'm saying to myself, Father, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? I know I'm capable of doing this. I know I'm capable of doing that. And we're all
Because if you're
sitting in
comfortable,
this.
you don't move.
Exactly.
Well, they got to tell us that they got to make us make bricks without straw. People got to think we got to get out of our comfort zone. We can't be destroyed, but our people need to get out of their comfort zone and be shown the door. So there's definitely that.
And that hasn't really happened yet.
Yeah, no, exactly. It hasn't happened yet because now you're starting to feel it because, again, what Trump was always trying to do, to me, Trump was trying to get to this week, late July, early August. Now, all of a sudden, who gets introduced within the last, 10 days? You have who? Zelensky showing their hand. You have who? Saudi Arabia. The Dow is down 400 points. It may have gone back on up because obviously the government they're not doing circuit breakers anymore. Trump learned that the last time. No, I'm being dead serious. Trump learned that the last time in 2020, they're not going to do circuit breakers. So what they're doing is they're just injecting capital. So all of these things. So the market, when I say you can invest in a market, but it's fake. It's all designed to cook up. So then everybody gets into the honeypot. Oh, would the government actually do that to us? Would the government actually wipe us away? Yes, they will. Yes, they will. Will the government actually relocate or repurpose funds from, average, common, everyday citizens to, these technocracies and these oligarchs? Yes, they will.
They've been doing it.
And exactly. So now they only have a little bit of time to do it because, again, they're also bumping up on the Most High schedule. Don't get that twisted. They are not happy with what's going on with Ghana. They are not happy with what's happening in Burkina Faso. And when I tell you about a system and the system that they have in terms of an economy and how an informal economy works, Burkina Faso's it. Burkina Faso is a very informal economy, and they only really work on a very, very concentrated formal economy, i.e., their money is their money, but everything else that they do, especially contracting on the outside, you have to be well understood and versed in how they have their cultural efficacy or cultural effectiveness in how you are dealing with those high levels of Burkina Faso. And again, what they're trying to do in Burkina Faso, they're trying to discredit Traore because why? Because there's no the ability to try to sway or, do basically all the stuff that they do, the wickedness and everything else. It's not having an impact. It's not having the effect that
Well, Chari
they
is
want.
people. He's a populist. Chari is people centric, and he's a populist, and the people know him. That they're supporting it. These other governments in Africa are not that way. Or the Sahel states are moving in that direction, and that's what we're gonna have to be. So what we have going out when you had ISO Speed go to Africa, he dispelled what on the verge of entering the land, the evil report. See, we had element spies and going to land and get an evil report, and he went in there like a good spy. Wait a minute, this land is, we could go in at once, Now whether our people respond as we did before years ago, this is the Most High's thing. Well, I'm doing it this time, but the matter is the land is being in what was Isaiah? They said that the Most High is preparing the mountains of Israel. He's declared to that. So it's a process going on in the land and going on in us. What we have to do is dispel narratives. As things get hotter here, we will move. Like you said, we've moved in areas of the country, and we will move out of here. But just getting the people together on things like that. You got to understand, when Moses wanted to rise up in his own strength, the coons tricked on him, about ready tricked on him because he took out an Egyptian, so he had to go away. They had to go through some stuff to get to a point. Then he had to get to some point to go back and get the people ready. I believe our young people, as you said, are ready to go. We concentrate on them. If we got to lose another generation to get in the land, then buy whatever we have to leave here, buy. But we need to just follow the Most High and invest in us and our people, and count on the Most High to supply the things we're going to need as we operate in obedience to Him. If it had to be manna from heaven, we're going to have enough. So that's what I want to be on. I told my family they want to buy some land in upstate New York to have an opportunity. No, don't make no long-term investments in Babylon. No, I'm not trying to do that. You don't really want to do that. If we can get some money in Africa, if we get some land in Africa, we could do something. I'm trying to really prepare my family for the fact that the scorch of the fact of what the Most High is going to do to this place. So it is what it is. We all have that struggle.
I think a lot of people tend to forget what a war does. A war displaces people. You may have a nice house. Okay, you got something on over there. Guess what? The new change in management and they're gonna go on over and they're gonna tell people, get out of that house. Why? Because that we have our person there. They're gonna live there. Where am I gonna live? You're gonna have to figure that out.
We are requisitioning your house for the military.
Or for this particular official or that particular, yeah. It's not friendly. It's not nice. Oh, well, you got a new person. What do? It's wealth redistribution. We saw that in what? 2 Kings. Remember when Israel had been defeated by Nebuchadnezzar and his army? What ended up happening? They took away all the nobles, and it was actually all of the common folks, the commoners, the uneducated folks that stayed. Because why? If you're not that educated, you ain't going to really solve problems. You're not going to be able to band like that. You don't necessarily have the skills to be able to work things on out from X, Y, and Z. So what you going to do? You're going to go back to what you've naturally done. Start gleaning those grapes. Start picking grapes. start picking olives.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the reality, because again, look, I already know in war, I'm going to be targeted.
Absolutely. They already told us you will own nothing. You will own nothing and be happy. They already told us what the thing is. They blew up the Georgia Guidestone. They didn't blow up the principles there. So we already know what they got in store in their vanity. So but the Most High has something different in store for them.
So let me put this on out there. So oil prices jump more than 6% after Trump says U.S. will hit Iran hard. This is yesterday, updated about 6 minutes ago. So crude oil prices rose sharply Wednesday after President Trump said the U.S. will hit Iran hard in retaliation for an attempted surprise attack on American forces in the Middle East. Brent crude futures international benchmark gained about 7% to 89.94 barrels. So what they tried to do, and I was going to explain this, they're trying their best in terms of market manipulation. No, everything is fine, everything is good. And then you see that the oil is at one of its lowest prices. So what they're trying to say is everything is fine with oil, right? But the water's draining out the tub. Do you all see this? The water is draining out the tub. So even though they're trying to say that things are fine, once everything is gone, they'll still say that things are fine until people show up at the tank and there's no oil. People, so I hate to be this this cynical about it, for lack of better terms, but that's what you see happening.
Well, I'm definitely cynical about it because
So
it's here's the nonsense. So you as a military person, you know that if your plan is to attack someone on a Wednesday, you're not going to put it out there and say, "Hey, we're going to attack on Wednesday." Right? You don't do that.
no,
So
they're not going to attack Wednesday, but they said they're going to hit them hard. Yeah,
but in this case they said,
go ahead.
"Okay, we're going to hit them hard." It's like these messages that they put out there are just smoke screens that they use for the excuses to do the real dirt of spiking the oil price.
Well, and it's a delicate game because you got to remember Trump is trying to squeeze every single cent that he can without domestic insurgency. That's what it is. Okay, when it's like dictatorship 101. You want to continue to try to quell the population until the population isn't quelled anymore. Then that's when you have, the National Guard. And then when the National Guard turns on you, then at that point, then that's when you're praying that you can get on the helicopter to get to Air Force One and then to get the heck on out of Dodge while you are, quote unquote, still the president in exile or something crazy like that. And so it's, it is almost like it's a comic book show. Yeah, go ahead.
To your point, I think you made it, maybe you made it Monday or last week, keeping his constituents happy.
Yeah.
Because that's his last hope. Once they turn against him, it's over.
Exactly. Because again, it'll liquidity and money always has, it's something called velocity. And velocity is, look, you don't see it, what so you ever like wound up or swung a yo-yo, right? And that yo-yo, you swing that sucker hard and then you let it like ravel up. Well, the less it spin that it has, you actually have what? You actually have more power, right? There's more force as it's rounded on up, and that force continues to kind of gain and gain. And it's like, oh man, sometimes you'll hit yourself if you swing something. It's like, oh, I didn't expect it to hurt that bad. This is what's happening as funds are kind of coming in and moving in. Every single time there's an action within the Middle East or anywhere, especially with what you see with China or Russia, and even with Brazil, earlier this week, with Lula talking to his people. Hey, we need to develop our forces because we're not trying to be the next ones, right? They said that we're not trying to be the next ones invaded. So of course, everything in that swing of that pendulum, that swing of that yo-yo, as it's kind of coiling up, when the impact hits the United States, it's going to hit the United States hard, because you've already seen that in this nation, there's already been a propensity. Hey, we're not going to pay out food stamps. Hey, we're going to take away Medicaid. Hey, we're going to, put everything on the states. Well, why? Because they're trying to make sure that the states can then have the blame while the federal government does whatever it does. I honestly look at it like this. There is a worst case scenario that, what if we see a federal government literally dissolving overnight? What would that look like? And many can argue that we're actually kind of already there with a shell of a federal system. People, what? They just show up and their bosses aren't there. We can laugh. It may be funny. It could sound really strange. No, I don't know. I don't see that. I can't do that. Let me tell you, that happened with the Soviet Union. You want to talk about capitalism and communism, and they're all the same. It's the same system. This one is going to be a lot worse because there's a lot of people that believe in this system worldwide. Well, it's democracy, and they're supposed to have this, and it was supposed to have. Nobody showed up.
The name escapes me at the moment, but there's a group of people that they said that's coming. There's something. They're not soothsayers or anything like that. I forgot what the term that they call themselves are, but they said exactly what you're talking about.
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. I would honestly argue it's Trump there as a puppet to, like, for that particular reason. He's just an empty suit. You see what I'm saying? Has this thing already been done? And hey, it's just going to be into oblivion. And you got the rest of the world mad because now, if the United States, because you have to remember, Saudi Arabia was really the lifeline. And whatever game that they're playing, I know Jacob was saying the Hegelian dialect, and it could be, and that's the truth. But sometimes, even though you may plan for a collapse or something, bad happening, right? Some people do deviate from the script. Some people are they may deviate from the script. Well, you weren't supposed to do this. You're supposed to do that. Well, you were supposed to, and we're supposed to have this much oil until this and that. Well, I got second thoughts. I thought about my children. You have to really be some diabolical people to pull this stuff off. You have to have those type of people that we have in there. Look, you're seeing it. You're now seeing officers all of a sudden, military officers are now speaking up and saying what they weren't supposed to be saying. And they're on active duty. I told you that last week. I said, what? I said it's going to be coming. Because you want to know why? Because a lot of them don't want to be in The Hague. A lot of them can see, I could be dangling on the gallows. What do you think is going to happen with all these people? I look at that. I'm like, man, they're going into their own destruction. All those people right there, everybody that you see, they're enjoying their time for now. But I'm like, but when the bill comes due, they don't realize how they're going to be paying. And it's not a very pretty picture.
It's like all the people that sell their soul, when the
Mm-hmm.
bill comes due, they never think about the bill coming due.
Bingo. And on top of that, have you all now heard now more, and they're saying it in the media, which is, I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Because to be quite honest, I've always said this, it's a controlled collapse, right?
Right.
The rest of the world is now seeing the U.S. for who it is, for who they are. They got a chance to see that with FIFA World Cup, right? And the only people that are talking about, oh, I want to come back to the United States. I love the United States. How many folks that were non-melanated? We're saying that a large majority. How many folks that were melanated saying that? I'm sure that the experience for those of melanated skin had more than likely a very different experience.
Definitely.
And I don't hear that, oh, well, we need to go back. I don't want it, but it is really more of the European folks. Because why? Because Babylon's intoxicating. For them, for us, you want to know the truth? Look, you don't see we already know. I'm sure in this system, you already saw that with the one ref from Somalia have been deported. He didn't even get a chance to ref a game in the United States. They deported him. Now, what the facade has been pulled off, especially for these other countries, these other nations. Yeah, if the only thing that you like is the AC in the United States, who was the air conditioner built by? Who invented the air conditioner? The modern air conditioner was built by a black man. Do you see? They don't want to let us go. I would honestly argue that they would. The intent is that the system collapses, then they'll try to put us back into the quote unquote black jobs. That is my argument. And man, I just had that thought. That thought was fleeting. That thought was fleeting. Oh, it'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. But but that is why when we are seeing how these nations are working, the manipulation is really over with. If you can't manipulate, especially with the United States, it's over. The U.S. has shown everything that it could show. Iran is no longer playing those games. You have BRICS that's now saying, hey, we're going to leave things alone. You can't do that. Not with the U.S. They even have national security policy when it comes to alternative currencies. That's what I want to touch on. Burkina Faso with their informal economies. They're doing their transactions in gold. They're doing their deals in gold. Oh my goodness. These other nations in West Africa, they're seeing this. And they're trying to figure out how do we do this? How do we work? And all the while, the biggest group of people that actually positively effectuates change with the breadth of knowledge that the Most High has given us in this captivity has been us. Yeah, they're stuffing away. They're stuffing away ranch dressing. Ranch dressing inventor Steve Henson, a black entrepreneur and former plumber, invented ranch dressing in the early 1950s. Steve Henson was born in 1918 in Thayer, Nebraska, and working as a plumber. So if we're doing this in captivity, what inventions do you think we'll be able to do when we're out of captivity? I'm just saying. All right, final thoughts.
None from me.
All right, thank you, brother Fast Nickel. Yeah, we're gonna have to take a look at that with the suggestion that you had said with the economy cover, the economist, excuse me, the economist cover with the changes this year. But I do want us to think about this. What do you think things supposed to be after this? After this conflict, after this war? Because again, life doesn't turn back. They can't. You realize they cannot bring life back to normal. It's just too much dirt. It's too much dirt on those Eastern Mediterranean nation folks. It's too much dirt on the United States. There's no normal.
Well, I'm not looking at the cover, but just from my own recollection, the one thing that we really haven't seen yet is anything regarding virus or any
The pandemic play.
pandemic. Thank you.
Mm. I think it's already here. They're just not going to tell you that.
Well, we haven't seen it from a visual standpoint. We've heard things talked about,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the next thing, I guess, based on that cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something. Well, when does that get queued? How does that get queued? Does that trigger, hey, we have to start at the source. Is the source the United States? What does instability look like? Will instability start to hit? Where does it hit? Who does it hit? There's a lot. Thank you, brother Fast Nichols. There's a lot.
Yes, a lot.
Oh, hallelujah.
Well, for me, I'll be brief. An increase in Q2UA membership on the continent.
Oh
with
yeah, we already
with
listen.
with
That
with expatriate folks from here. Just a bigger footprint and better cooperation, better operation.
yeah, hallelujah. Hallelujah. That I used to think there's something here. This is Poos. If you've heard of Hidden Valley Ranch, yeah, it's Mr. Henson's all praise to the most high. I heard about that. It was my grandmother or my mom used to talk about that all the time. And when I moved out to Kansas City, when I was younger, that was one of the things that was said, and I was like, oh man, a black man invented ranch, because it and he had the patent on it. But Hidden Valley Ranch is just, it's a better taste. It's a creamier taste. I like ranch, and I'm like, oh yeah, this definitely had to be invented by a brother, because it goes so good with, what I'm talking about. Well, buffalo wings. I have to eat. I have to have my ranch with buffalo wings. So I'm a ranch person. I'm not a blue cheese. I'm sorry. I'm a ranch.
Well,
Sorry. Go.
some of the biblical scholars that go more closely have sent a shockwave through the population by opining that perhaps the chicken was not Torah.
Oh boy. Uh-oh.
That would be a
Don't,
seismic wave.
don't even.
Oh God, no.
Then we gonna have some quail legs. We gonna. Oh, we're gonna have
Oh
some
boy,
quail legs. If
that would
that's
be
the case.
Well,
that's
you
cruel.
talk about. I'm going to just bring this up since you're talking about inventions.
Mm-hmm.
Those old enough to remember the name DJ Kool Herc from New York City. He's the one that invented the dual turntable for scratching, because his background was he was an electrician, and something through his being an electrician, he figured out a way how to make it work. So he is the father of for DJs and being able to spin records with multiple turntables.
The holy
He's the
grail of
inventor.
DJs.
Yeah, DJ Cool Herc.
Look at what our people do. But you understand, they understand that's what they hate. They know that once we because for them it's different in terms of what freedom looks like in oppression. For them, they're like, well, then they're going to try to get at us. They're going to try and get back at us. Actually, we
Well,
don't care.
they think to put people in boxes, literally, and we think outside of the box, and
Yeah,
and they can't deal with that, because they think putting us in traps and the snare, and we under the guise that we escape their snares and establish a new way, and they can't do that. They can't deal with that.
look, if I were them, it wouldn't be us that I would be concerned with. It would be those other European nations, just in my opinion, that I'd be afraid of.
Well, the harlot better watch the beast she's riding on.
Yep.
She's worried about the other person on the other horse that she's fighting like a knight, and not looking at her steed, because
Exactly.
the beast like to go on strike, about to go on strike or worse.
Exactly. All right. Well, let me get up on out of here. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for the panel for joining me in this 3 hours. Can you believe it's 3 hours? Man, that's half a shift. I don't work half a shift. No. Gotta take
Brothers,
lunch.
let us reason among each
Lunch
other.
pause.
Yeah, we did that.
And we'll figure things out very quickly. We have a lot of the necessary scholars that'll be able to work on economic policies. We saw what economic policies done. The end of it, right? The end of greed. The end of you're looking at the end of capitalism. We're seeing this, right? And that's why they say, but you shall think about these things at the end, at the end thereof, So they'll understand. Dang. Everything we did was messed up. And we told them, yes, it was. But we would have healed her. We would have healed Babylon, but she refused to.
She refused treatment.
Yep. And now we told Babylon that Babylon had a mental condition, right? That vanity, right? That mental illness. I don't know about don't get hot and bothered about the chicken thing. So
I was just being facetious. Facetious.
Yeah, that starts to like spread, like, hey, listen, I'm eating the chicken, Look,
we're gonna do it. Yeah, we'll work on it. We're
So,
gonna decouple. We're decoupling from Babylon in real time. And that's what happened.
Exactly. So yeah, and the black inventors, yeah, we've done everything. We really have. And again, what will they be able to invent? They'll be more inventive in terms of the ways that they're able to, delete one another, and that's how they're able to conquer. But again, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Which is really the Most High's prophecy, right? The more you do wickedness, right? If all you know is death, then all you're going to do is death, and at the end of the day, that's all you'll know how to do.
God is not mocked. Whatsoever man soweth, he shall also reap. Those are the seeds they put in the ground. That's what's those who live by the sword shall die by the sword. That's the thing. So that's tailor made for Esau. All the word of the Most High is against them all over the place. And the Most High, he fulfills his word. They're done. His prophecies, they're done.
Absolutely. So whether you are an Israelite or a Gentile, salvation is through Yahushua HaMashiach.
All praise to the Most High.
Hallelujah. With that said, family, let me start putting things away. Start cleaning up my area. Oh, here we go. Like that. So with that said, family, thank you again for your prayers, your support. It does help me to get on out here and just fellowship with you all. It's fellowship. This is my morning fellowship. We don't be afraid, family. Don't be discouraged. Keep praise in your mouth, because when you have praise, guess what you get a chance to do? You get a chance to stay away from complaining when all you're doing is praising. And you have to praise with a contrite heart. Praise like you mean it. The Most High is good. He's got you through many, many challenges. He'll get you through this challenge. And again, for our people, this is the ultimate challenge. Congratulations. You're in the ultimate test. You've made it to the final level of the ultimate test. Congratulations. You should be proud. We should all be proud. We should be rejoicing. Man, we made it to this level, to this stage. So now we have to be encouraged in this, real life prophetic Hunger Games. Oh man, y'all gonna have to be watching some Hunger Games and uh the Leave the World Behind. Man, I got some things I gotta be reviewing. All right, family. Most time will, and I'll see you all tomorrow. And with that, shalom, salama, siyemi, shalom, peace and blessings. Yasharel.